I've had the privileged position for the last 7 years for talking about large-scale migrations and modernizations. In fact, it's been my privilege to talk about that at reInvent for 7 years running. And you and I have known each other now for a couple of years, as we were just reflecting. In fact, prior to this podcast, you and I were both on stage at the London FSI Symposium. It was great to hear your story. And one of the things I thought was quite controversial as you talked, and I want to explore it now, is you said, when you looked at the roadmap and sort of layout that actually I'd had the privilege of writing over the years, you've actually fundamentally disagreed with that. And when we first met, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. I love contrarian views. I absolutely love to be challenged in an appropriate way. And when you and I first met, I think it was like 18 months ago when you were going into your migration to cloud, you were like, Jonathan, I fundamentally disagree with what you're saying. And let's share that for the audience. So to give a little bit of context for everybody, when I've looked at modernization and migration and when I was a customer, we had the framework of the 7 Rs. And just for everyone's sort of recollection, we're talking about relocate, we're talking about rehost, we're talking about replatform, we're talking about refactor, we're talking about retire, we're talking about retain, we're talking about repurchase. And those 7 Rs and putting each application into its bucket and then executing to a plan over 36 months as you've got your applications in these different swim lanes. And that's how many customers have done it. But the world has changed. There are new techniques, there are new tools. Share me your approach if you take us back in time. Why did you disagree with it? Why did you take Danske on a different tack?
Thank you. It's a great question, but I think I took it a little bit further than just to disagree with it. I fundamentally banned the use of the 7 Rs with any partner, any vendor, including all of our teams from AWS working with us.
Wow.
They are banned from using the term 7 Rs.
Tell us more.
All right, so here's the thing, right? Historically, we've been thinking of 7 Rs as a way to classify, and the reason for this is the fundamental understanding of how cloud operates, how to move things has been limited. So a fundamental framework was required for people to have a view on how to plan these migrations, right? But we've now been doing migrations for many, many, many years, right? And hundreds and thousands of these things have been done across various industries. And just to dig a little bit deeper into what the 7 Rs are, so let's just take one example, rehost. That predicates that at the start of a program, we will determine whether an application will move to the cloud in the rehost lane. And then essentially, the organizational mindset becomes, once that R lane is complete, that the treatment of that application is complete.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's how programs are structured. That's how budgets get built. That's how teams get formed. And so if an application is assessed to be in a rehost lane or a replatform lane, that is basically its destiny decided. But if you dig a little bit deeper, should that really be the case? Should we really think of applications as a whole only being in a certain lane? Now, why is that? If we look at how organizations are built and the benefits of actually coming to cloud, so the benefit of rehosting something or the benefit to the business of replatforming something, how does the benefit really go back to the organization? Just an application fundamentally moving from one spot to the other isn't really what drives benefit. What drives benefit is what it changes in the organization. And organizations are not built and designed in application terms. Organizations are built and designed in skill set terms, in people terms. Mm-hmm. And so we have to think of these transformations as the real benefit of an action being done has to be understood. So my fundamental idea is, if we had no limits to anything that we would want to do, if we had unlimited time, if we had unlimited money, what would we do? Now, you can never say 100%, but a very large proportion of applications or operating estate of any organization, if that was the operating environment, no limits, would probably end up with a significant change, which would either be akin to a complete re-architecture of the application or partial retirement or things like that, or a business process change. So the logical thing is, for a vast majority of the estate, the final end state should either be yes, removal is always the best option, but a re-architecture, fundamental re-architecture of some sort, whether it's a business re-architecture or a technical re-architecture. So our objective, when we take that first step, is not necessarily to label something and leave it there. Our objective is to bring it as close to the target state as we possibly can.
So it's like a instead of migrate then optimize, it's let's shoot straight to optimize as close as we can as appropriate for that
Correct.
application.
It's for the time, the energy, the money, the organizational capacity we're spending doing something. What's the biggest bang for buck we can get? And that is very rarely at a full application level. So we talked about this, but let's take an example. Let's say we only had the skill set to optimize the database layer of an application, but not the web layer. So we could move the database layer to a fully managed service, let's call it RDS.
Yep.
But we actually did not at the time have the skill set, or some business constraint determined that we couldn't change the web layer. What lane is that now? There isn't one, right? Because it's between lanes.
You've taken two approaches to different things, and I've done that, and I've seen customers do that, and I think the R's, they do. It's almost like once you put a label on something, that label sticks.
Exactly.
And I think you said no.
And that's exactly it, Jonathan, right? So I think the corporate, so the way these things work in almost any organization, there's large programs get formed, there's targets associated with it. Once a target state for an application is met or has deemed to be met, that is it, right? And so when we label something, organizations have got fantastic memories for these things, right? It gets labeled, that application was labeled to be rehost and we rehosted it. So done. What is there more to talk about?
So you're 700 apps in now to 3,000 apps, give or take how you quite label them, which is a lot of apps, a sizable estate, petabytes.
Actually, distributed is a lot less. The distributed estate is roughly just over 1,000.
Awesome. What's been your approach from both a people perspective then to shoot as close to that optimize as you can, but then tell us more about the technology angle to support that, because the tooling has changed. It's matured heavily. We've also seen generative AI come in to make some of those informed decisions. I think you've been very particular and deliberate on some of the technology your teams have used to accelerate that in your people structure. Give us the lowdown on that.
Absolutely. So I think it's, I'm not going to profess and claim that the approach that I've taken is going to be the absolute best for everybody.
Of course.
It's food for thought.
Yeah.
Right? So the approach that we're taking was very heavily determined by the organizational outcome that we were seeking. What is the organizational outcome we're seeking? And I think you and I both know, in our case, we wanted two things. Get as fast as we can over into cloud so that we can consume new things, because that is what is fueling our business strategy of growth and digitization. And optimize as much as we can as we go. So in our case, what we have actually done is that the fundamental tenet is we will take everything to as far as possible with near no human effort involved.
And that's a key.
And that's key, right?
That's key.
So we have been able to now get to a point, and it's actually, there's an interesting discussion about how we got to that point, because let me explain it and then we can talk about it. So our approach really is to automate everything, and almost without exception. So in most cases, not in most cases, in pretty much all cases now, the only thing that is not automated in our first phase move to cloud is user testing. Every single thing before that is completely automated.
So that's the UAT element.
After that is also completely automated. So whether it is, once we figure out this application needs to move, whether it is how long will the data transmission take, which processor to use, which DNS records are going to get moved, moving those DNS records, creating new images on cloud, you name it. Like there's obviously a migration, a simple migration has got about 200 steps, a complex migration about 600, and so essentially out of between 200 to 600. Except the one step, which is UAT, every single thing, every single email, that goes out, every single piece of communication that goes out, every change record that gets created.
Yeah, and that's the extraordinary thing that I found so interesting about the way Danske Bank have done this, because in my experience dealing with highly regulated on-premises systems where you've got dozens of DMZs, things are behind firewalls for very big reasons. You don't always have consistent tooling out there. Configuration management databases can be hit and miss. You've got manual Excel spreadsheets. So for customers that are listening to this, what do you say to them who are like, well, how do you automate that when I've got all these different data silos? I mean, in my experience, even rolling out like App Dynamics or Datadog or Dynatrace or any of those, that's like a multi-year project in its own right. So how, when you've got those gaps, how do you handle that?
It's a really good question, but I'll sort of maybe get to the heart, which I believe is the heart of the question, your question. So it's I mean, I think you and I both know that anything can be automated. So the question isn't
with enough
whether
effort,
we should,
absolutely,
with enough effort. So the question always is the effort required to do this piece of automation justified? Whether or not it can be done is not really a question. It's
That's
whether
true.
it's worth it.
Yeah,
right?
I buy that.
And so to that, my question is, would you rather make a mistake once in the automation or potentially 100 times trying to do it manually?
So you've overinvested in that automation. So you've targeted everything, and to correct me if I'm wrong here, but you've targeted, the firewall setup, the network setup, the VMware setup, the Unix setup, whatever it is, you've gone after that config file, you've gone after that data to import.
Absolutely. We jokingly say we actually have almost a mini data platform with
yes, you've said that before,
with 3 stages running on it. But I lost count now. I think we started with something like 50 or 60 parameters per application. Right now, I think our setup, which is called MDB internally, it's got over tens of thousands of parameters per application. It is so good that
there's a lot of tables in there
now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's probably, and I'm guessing here, but that's become your magic, right, for going fast.
I mean, that fuels basically the entire automation. And what we really have been able to do is, it became so good, but also so big that we had to re-architect the platform to handle the load.
A quick data engineering project on the side.
Exactly.
So with that overinvestment in automation, the kicker, and this is where I want to get to the detail. As an executive, as you and I both know, momentum, early wins, super important. How did you achieve those? Did you stop and go, we're going to do this automation piece? That might take X time. What was your approach to handling that angle?
Yeah, I think once again, amazing question. So I think this it's very easy to think, all right, we need to do a lot of work before we can really start, right? And that can be the antithesis of a program like this or an approach like this, because as you rightly said, showing value to the organization, to our customers, to our shareholders is super important, right?
Yeah.
So what we did is we said, this is our target state. We will automate everything. That is our target state. However, that is not the objective. That is the way to do it. But what we are trying to do in this case is move things to cloud.
So you're building the rails as the train's going along.
Correct. But the important thing here is we knew from day one, and every single member of the team knows from day one, that what we're actually trying to do is move things to cloud. How we do it can be the tooling. The automation is an aid, it's not the goal. So given that was the mindset, what we did is we defined, let's say take a small application, there's 200 steps involved individually to do it. We defined every single one of those 200 steps in extreme amounts of detail. And then we said, okay, we're going to take a 6-week, this is exactly what we did. We ran a 6-week on-site hackathon with actually people from AWS and partners and our own teams, put them in a large room and basically said, automate as much of this as possible in 6 weeks.
Yeah. And you're clearing the decks from everything else, right? This is your focus for the next 6 weeks. Because you've actually even defined the failure parameters there as well, haven't you? Like, if we can't get to this, then the approach is fundamentally flawed. We're going to have to look at something else.
Correct.
But you're clearing the decks, you're taking some skilled individuals, you're giving them that goal, and you're giving them the executive support. And, was your job to remove blockers during that time and anything they found?
Always the case as an exec to do that. But I think that the key for us was, the idea wasn't to get to 100% automation in 6 weeks because it was sheerly impossible.
No, the goal was to make progress.
The goal was to make progress. So we basically said, at the end of 6 weeks, we're going to migrate the first application.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing that's going to be different is the team that is doing the migration. How much of it is going to be done by automation? How much is going to be done manually? So you can build as much automation as you possibly can in 6 weeks, and that'll be automated. The rest of it will be manual, and the automation engine will keep building, and the migration engine will keep reducing what they've got to do manually. So it took us quite a while, actually, to get to a near 100%.
Yeah, so you've got this data lake, which keeps changing, keeps growing. That's all positive, as a data lake should do. As you need more data sources to migrate, potentially different workloads. You've done this 6-week hackathon. That 6-week hackathon was then to almost, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're starting to get data into this warehouse. What is the tooling? What is the approach to now hyper automate that migration and optimization? That was the 6-week sprint.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So essentially, we, talking obviously at the top level, there's a data lake that sources data from everywhere.
Yep.
The architecture of that is in 3 tiers. This, by the way, is described in reasonable amounts of detail in one of the AWS blogs, technical blogs. So listeners could
we'll pop a link on for that.
Yeah. That fuels a tool, a good partner of ours, actually AWS and Danske Bank, called Cutover. And essentially, Cutover is really a orchestrate anything to a very, very deep level, technical level tool. And it's and I'm probably not doing it justice because it can do a whole lot more. But essentially, my idea when we started was I wanted to automate the entire project. So my idea was every single thing that you can potentially have on an MPP or traditional project plan, every single step will go down to the level that an action needs to be executed in a system, and we will automate everything. So that's what we did. We defined each one of these steps, and we broke them down into multiple types of runbooks. These data points that we've gathered kind of create these runbooks automatically. I think I've used a stat publicly. We compared, and this is not just a single point comparison across various industries and various organizations, simply creating a fully defined runbook for an application to be moved. Just simple 200 steps with all of the definitions. What's the server name? What's the IP address? What's the firewall rule? What's the where it's got to move? What's the IP ranges?
What's the DNS record? Everything else.
Security groups, anything, right? That is anywhere between a 3 to 4 week process, and that's being optimistic because you can imagine the amount of data needs to be gathered. You've got to verify it. You've got to go talk to a lot of people and so on. It's a 3 to 4 week process. We just love to push boundaries on this thing because we did a test again, and our average now is 2.65 seconds.
And that sounds a little unbelievable to the point where you're like, okay, so really 2.65 seconds. So that's I'm projecting here, but that's, I would imagine, an accumulation of many automations being solved on the way to that 2.65 seconds.
Absolutely.
So it's not just like, hey, I could do it at 2.56. That's like in the back end, I need system and programmatic access to firewalls. I need system and programmatic access as appropriate with minimum security as required to do all of these different things. And I need, the IAM policies properly set up to enable that when things are moving into cloud. That's the hard work that goes behind that.
Absolutely.
2.6 seconds.
It's a great stat, 2.65 seconds to use, but you're spot on. It requires all of the data to be available. It requires the plan to be automatable.
Yeah.
If we define a plan that by default actually has manual steps in the middle, as an example, I almost went on a bit of a crusade when our compliance and legal teams wanted to ask, in their view, only 5 questions per application to the application teams. And I basically decreed that we will not ask any questions. And the reality was, right? They were sort of right. They were going, it's 5 questions. You're going to take probably months to do these migrations anyway. So what difference does it make? But having that goal of automating everything without fail, without question, allowed us to go, no, this is not good enough.
Yeah.
And we didn't.
And you're also eliminating, we as humans being the most valuable part in this equation, those human questions being wrong coming back. It's like, no, we're going to query programmatically, whether that's SQL statements, whether that's log files, whether that's whatever it is, we're going after that data.
Absolutely. I mean,
that's the key differentiator. That almost detaches you from not having to use those 7 R's, because we're actually shooting to the end goal. And I think that's that hard work I think your teams were able to do while also delivering those earlier wins sounds like how you build that momentum to where you are now.
Yeah, I see. It goes back to fundamental principles, right? I think we have both been in many places to realize that you can almost never trust a human generated input.
Yeah,
it's fundamentally
unfortunately,
flawed.
Yeah.
It's
We
fundamentally flawed,
are
right?
flawed.
We are flawed.
Yeah.
And so one of the key tenets was we are not going to rely on any human generated information apart from, let's say, classifications of applications and so on.
Yeah,
But
and
they are
that's
not
a key.
used.
That's a key principle there. You
Yes.
can't we can't. And when I heard that, the first time, you were at dinner 18 year and a half ago, and I was like, really? That's just a key principle to declare.
Absolutely. I mean, human generated information will fundamentally destroy the confidence. The first time it's wrong, an automation will fail, an incident will be created, then the confidence in the automation system drops, so on and so forth, and it's not required.
So let's recap. You've quite rightly taken an extraordinarily interesting approach to build that data warehouse and tackle all of those, those data bunkers which you might not have access to. Let's get into them. You've done that 6-week hackathon to say, okay, we've got this data. How are we actually now going to bring this tooling, bring the people together? We're almost going to detach ourselves from, for want of a better word, and again, I'm projecting here, correct me, from dealing with the application team complexifiers. We're literally going to, here's what you've got. You've got a load balancer, you've got firewalls, you've got web layer, you've got headless APIs, you've got database, you've got block storage. We're going to take it all. And we're going to move it and optimize it and then give it you back, and you're actually not going to experience any downtime there.
Pretty much.
What next? Let's go a little bit deeper then. So let's look at what I found when I was migrating, going to the cloud. It was fundamentally about me being a leader, removing blockers, learning to set principles, but also empowering the talented engineers, the folks you have working with and for you. Tell us a little bit about how that has evolved over the last 2 years.
Absolutely. This approach that we've taken, one of the fundamental things it does in the organization is changes a cloud migration from being a people scale problem to a skilled engineering problem. Traditional approaches of these migrations are you set up a squad of people, and a squad of people is well known to migrate. If you're slow, maybe 1 to 2 applications. If you're super
this
fast,
migration
maybe 3 to
factory
4.
idea.
That's
right?
it, right? You just run squads and squads, and the only way to scale is horizontally, right? If you want 200 applications done, you move to 100 squads, and there you go. So it is a people scale problem. Whereas what we've been able to do is convert this from a people scale problem to a very skilled engineering problem. Now, this has other benefits. Scaling people is hard, up or down. Scaling good people is even harder.
Yeah.
And so when we remove the problem of trying to scale people, we go down to scaling using engineering. And that is almost the best place to be. So what otherwise would have been a sort of rather boring, hey, we're just trying to lift something over into the cloud problem, is now an extremely good engineering problem. There are other benefits on top of this. Because it is nearly 100% programmatic, we know the target estate that we're creating on cloud with extreme amounts of detail. Even when it was a little bit distributed and not particularly good on-prem, let's say a couple of firewall rules were not created through a central system, somebody did it manually.
Yeah,
On cloud, it's no
snowflake
longer
things.
the case.
Yeah, some snowflakes. Yeah,
Drift, right?
Yeah.
Drift is common.
and bad.
And very bad. And so we have caught all of those things because we just don't do anything manually, which basically means now the target estate is extremely well defined, which means we know it very, very well. Down to, one of the things we do as an example, just to illustrate, is because we want this automation to be so autonomous and good, before we shut down a VM on-prem, we take a snap state of every process running on the VM and we gracefully bring those down. when we bring up a VM on cloud, we automatically compare whether, when we gracefully brought everything up, whether the process setup on the two VMs was common or not.
Interesting.
And that may or may not suggest that all applications are working. However, that's a pretty good test. At least a better than nothing test, right? A significantly better than nothing. However, what this also does is we now know down to a process level what is running on our infrastructure. And that creates a lot of power. Because this data can be used for probably the best observability you can imagine. It can also be used for determining fantastic modernization architectures. We have enough data on most applications to be able to nearly autonomously generate a fully re-architected landscape. I mean, granted, this does not take care of business process re-architecture.
No.
But there's GenAI for that.
So you're doing almost right-sizing modeling because you have that data. So that's where the real cost benefit is for folks. So you're no longer over provisioning CPUs or memory or disk space or blah, blah, blah. You're now going, what does the right size for this application need to be to cope with, I don't know, 99.99 percentile of its use case.
Exactly.
And so as you're moving, are you turning on auto scaling? Are you moving the load balancer over to application load balancer? Are you using the database migration service? And is that being orchestrated by cutover as you do that? Give us a little bit more.
Yeah, really good question. So some yes, some no. But it comes down to the principle of how we decide what we will change and what we will not change.
Right.
So we're clear that this first phase move over to cloud, which is well, not a strict lift and shift in the industry terms, but an optimized lift and shift.
Yeah.
From an application standpoint, doesn't change anything. Now, the reason this is important is one of the other huge issues with this is organizational change fatigue.
Yeah.
Organizations run lift and shift programs for over 5 years at a time, and then there's this.
We're done.
We're done, right? But the reality is that is step one.
Yeah, you've now got to go and optimize.
And if we really just lifted and shifted and left everything as is on cloud, that is almost the worst thing we could do.
And you said something really important there, which I want to pick out. You actually said the words optimized lift and shift. So if we park the traditional 7 Rs, that is it's an optimized lift and shift. So you're getting that cost benefit analysis. You're getting that configuration that you want. You're right sizing your architecture as you go, which then you're right sizing your cost in accordance with. That's then giving you breathing room elsewhere to go and do other things from a fiscal perspective.
Absolutely. And I think taking it forward, so the key principle that I was describing is limit the impact to the application teams.
Yes.
Because we don't want them to set in.
And they're busy. They're doing a lot. They're busy.
They're busy fueling our growth strategy.
Absolutely.
Right? So what I want to do is, yes, we're going to need more effort from them, but for true modernization, not the move. So the move is taken care of, and we've removed effort from them almost nearly completely. And that also is removing this organizational fatigue. It's no longer about we're running a 5-year program just to move things around from one place to the other.
Yep.
It is very much, hey, that one's done. That one did not take too much effort from you. Now we've got to change. And now people are ready because the cloud program seems, actually the transformation seems more tangible. It's not just move that we're focusing on.
I want to leap forward a little bit now and probably a little bit of projection. One of the things we're seeing with generative artificial intelligence coming in as organizations do this is that there's an absolute need for business domain experts to come in, work alongside their talented, IT folks, whether that's data expertise, whether that's cloud expertise, whether that's application expertise, and come together because almost you're doing continual UAT and regression testing as models change, as data changes, as your outcomes want to change. How is what you've done influencing the construction of your future teams as you're now building new things on cloud? What's the construction? And I'll give you an interesting nuance. When I was doing that 8-9 years ago, what I found to be very successful was to actually take a talented cloud engineer, previously an infrastructure expert, and embed them into those application teams to now provide that cloud formation expertise, that optimization, that database expertise, that load balancer, the IAM policies, the CloudFront expertise, the EC2 expertise. Now we're seeing with the ability to use artificial intelligence to generate that code on behalf of developers. What's your take on where this is going? Because you're at an interesting point now. You've done, I think 700 applications. You've got that automation. You've got those runbook creation down to 2.65 seconds, which sounds absolutely incredible. Give us a little bit of a sneak peek on where you think it's going.
Fair enough. So this is something we're actively working on with broader AWS organization. We're doing a few things. I'll step into generative AI in a second, but now we're working actively to improve resilience significantly in our estate.
Interesting.
Now, here's something that that not your general business but customer obsession will find very interesting. So let's say that we now run chaos experiments, FIS-based chaos experiments on every application. We're not there yet, but we're starting. We ran our first couple some time ago. So let's say we test every application for EC2 terminations. Now, granted, a whole bunch will fail. We create engineering standards that suggest every application has to be resilient to EC2 terminations. Well, within reason, not C5 criticality. I mean, if you've only got one EC2 instance, then you probably don't need to be EC2 termination resilient. However, if you've got more than one, you probably should be, right? Yep. Anything above a criticality 3, generally speaking, should be. And once we've enforced it, now here comes the kicker. If we can prove that an application is EC2 termination resilient, it is very highly likely that we could use auto-scaling or spots for those applications.
Because you've proven it.
Because you've proven it, right.
So now if your spot instance gets withdrawn, you know the application can handle it.
Right. It's not a one-for-one mapping, but it's a pretty long way there. So we're using some interesting paradigms like this to not only improve our current state. This is what we can do on cloud. This is just not simply possible on-prem at all, right? And then move to an even more flexible based, even more optimized base. So that's on some of the things we're doing that are interesting. On the Gen AI space, so you brought that up. One of the things we're working on, and quite frankly, we're just waiting for Q to become available in the Frankfurt region. So what we're doing is we're building. I mean, it's quite an interesting thing. I sort of when I first defined this, I called it a funny name just so that everybody would understand it, and it seems to have stuck. We call it the Cloud Buddy. So we're building a agentic AI assistant, which will do many things. The first step of that will be to be able to take a brand new developer that joins the organization from zero to a hello world deployment on cloud inside of 24 hours. Now we're nowhere near that.
But that's your onboarding goal, and I love that North Star. Right. That's a great North Star.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
So how would we do that? We would ingest nearly everything we've got available about our infrastructure. Now we know a ton about our infrastructure really well. All of the documentation around it, obviously the Bedrock models we've already got have got knowledge about AWS.
Yeah.
So combining those things and obviously combining knowledge about our internal systems, the access requirements, and so on. The objective is for a developer to be able to use a Gen AI digital assistant to be able to go from zero to a deployment. Now, that is step one. This agent, once it has enough understanding of the system, now remember I talked about that database, we have got tremendous amounts of information about the application. We pump all of this into the assistant. Now, imagine the next scenario. We're running a high-severity incident call. The agent is taking on the transcripts of the call. And the agent is seeing the errors that are popping up in the system associated with, let's say, these CIs that are being mapped to this call. We can see some of these errors being generated. Now, the agent knows the entire running operations of the system. The agent knows here are some potential errors. The agent also knows here is what the humans are discussing about it. Take all of that up and go, actually, looking at all of these things, here's the first 5 things you should try, which are more than likely going to fix your problem. That will be able to bring our recovery time on things down dramatically.
Yeah, it's not only a instantiation buddy, it's a troubleshooting buddy.
It's a serious buddy, right? And now this is only possible if we've taken all the previous steps. So we're stacking.
You've got the knowledge, you've got the data.
It.
Yeah. And certainly, just from my own development, I find that the debugging mode, or what have I not done, or why is this not working, that time saver is just extraordinary in development.
Huge.
You're no longer going off to external websites, looking at what other people have done. You're actually getting, like 99 times out of 100, it's right, I'm finding.
Yeah. Actually, I think you just struck a nerve there. I actually don't remember now the last time I was in Stack Overflow. Whereas a couple of years ago, it would be a completely different thing.
Yeah. As a former developer, absolutely. An extraordinary view on the future. And certainly what I'm doing with Claude in Bedrock is, when I'm sitting down now, I'm posing a problem in the prompt, a very detailed. I'm actually using, Claude to make my prompt better, but then I'm asking it to produce an architecture, label the architecture with a number, then have a conversation about each part of the architecture and have it write the code for me.
Absolutely.
And then I find that I'm using in my IDE, I'm using Q to help me with the actual code instantiation, and they're coming together in just an extraordinary time-saving way. And what's really interesting to me is it can now generate the CloudFormation code for me for the element, or if I want to use CSS in the front end, or it's truly changing the game. Ashish, an extraordinary journey that's ongoing that you're having at Danske. I want to say thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Truly extraordinary. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's always a pleasure. It's a fun conversation, and getting into tech is nothing better.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.